kicking off with a really obvious question, what is a systematic review?
Well, a systematic review is a compilation of all the best evidence to answer a particular question. So we have a question in nutrition, and what we do then is we go out and decide what sort of evidence would best answer that question. We find all of the studies like that have been carried out, bring them together, and have a look at them and understand what they're telling us. So that essentially is what a systematic review is. It's a way of getting your best answer, your best understanding of the answer of a good question.
And so, I mean, presumably the process of doing a systematic review would be beneficial to all researchers, not just nutritionists and dietitians. I mean, it might apply to anybody.
No, absolutely. I mean, there are so many papers published these days that really none of us can read everything that we need to cover even our, quite specialist own field. So, we'd be lucky if we spent all the time reading that we could read 10% of it. So what we have to do really is rely then on summaries of the evidence. And if we rely on ad hoc summaries, people just pulling stuff together fairly willy-nilly, the trouble is we can get very biased answers to our questions. So the reason we need systematic reviews is they do summarize that huge volume of research and literature out there at the minute. But they summarize it in a way that tries to minimize the bias, tries to get at the clearest, truest answer from all of that research.
I mean, you're an NIHR researcher at the University of East Anglia, and you're looking at nutrition and dietetics particularly. What's your specific interest, professional interest, in that area?
In nutrition and dietetics? My particular interest is on nutrition and hydration, actually, in older people. So that's my very specific area of interest. In terms of systematic reviews, I've been really interested through my career in just trying to understand how diet affects health and looking at the best evidence we can get from that. So I've been interested in that in a variety of areas, cardiovascular disease particularly. But particularly at the moment, I'm very interested in the very elderly and how we keep them fit and well for as long as we can and keep their quality of life as high as it can. Because it's a lovely way, isn't it, of both being sociable, but also of enjoying life. So, good food, good nutrition, good hydration is just really crucial to people's lives. And so keeping that going into old age, I think, is really, really important.
We're looking at the students, the delegates who turn up to your workshop. I mean, in terms of looking at how you might use and understand systematic reviews, what are they going to get from the workshop?
Well, the reason for the workshop is really to help people feel that they understand and can deal with systematic reviews. That's what I would like them to take from it. This isn't a workshop that's going to tell somebody how to conduct a systematic review. That's not the plan. If you're thinking of it, it wouldn't be a bad start, I guess, but that's not what we're trying to do with this workshop. What we're trying to do is make people aware and familiar with systematic reviews so they can actually use them in everyday practice. They don't feel worried about them. They can read a systematic review, understand what's going on, understand what's being done and why it's being done, and judge it a bit. So when we talk about systematic reviews, we think of them as a really good source of evidence to underpin practice very often. But we need to make sure that they're good enough to do that. A good systematic review certainly is the sort of thing we need to underpin practice. But a sloppily carried out systematic review is not what we need. It may well come out with an inappropriate answer. So as readers, we need to be able to look at the systematic review, understand it, and have a look at its strengths and weaknesses. So not just understand the answer, the 3.68 or whatever comes out at the bottom. We obviously want to know where that comes from and do understand it, but we also want to understand whether we can trust that 3.68. That's really, really crucial. So that's what the workshop will be about, just getting familiar with systematic reviews, understanding the process of them, and beginning to be able to look at a systematic review and say, yes, that's an answer I can trust, or no, perhaps I'm not going to take so much notice of this one. That's where I want us to be.
Looking at the reviews that you've done yourself, can you pick out one or two that were the most interesting? What have you done where you thought, actually, I wasn't expecting that answer?
It is when you do a review and you come out with something that you're not expecting at the end that things get interesting in the way that, first of all, you get a sort of heart sink feeling. And then you try and make sense of that. You try and understand the context. You try and understand where it's coming from, and what that means. I found a couple of my very early reviews, we were looking at the effect of saturated fat on cardiovascular disease. And, I've been taught all my life that saturated fat, causes cardiovascular disease. So looking at the randomized controlled trials, we had lots of people in those big trials. I thought there'd be absolutely no problem in seeing the effects of saturated fat on cardiovascular disease. And when we saw actually no effect on mortality and a fairly small effect on cardiovascular disease, that was a bit of a, oh, gosh, okay, what does this mean? How do we deal with that? And if you like, that's the next stage from systematic review. It's then saying, okay, so what does this mean? What do we do with it? How do we interpret it? And that's, again, a bit of what we'll be doing in the course. We'll be thinking about how we look at a systematic review and what we take from that to move into the future, how we interpret it.
So in terms of preparing for maybe a new piece of research or applying for a new research grant and putting forward a proposal, would a good starting point be to actually look at existing systematic reviews to say, what evidence do we have so far, and where can there be opportunities for new pieces of research? Where can I take this in the future?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. So I've been talking particularly about practice and how systematic reviews underpin practice. But you're absolutely right, they underpin research as well. And we have had problems in the past in that because people haven't looked at the totality of the research that's been carried out in a particular area, that one specific question gets re-researched and re-researched, and you actually waste huge amounts of resources. Whereas if you looked at the studies that have already been carried out, you'd find actually perhaps there's already an answer there, and we need to move on and ask the next question. So you're absolutely right. Systematic reviews are very, very important in underpinning research as well as practice. Some of the funding agencies go so far as to only funding projects and primary research where there is already a systematic review that has checked that research has not already been carried out and come to a satisfactory answer. And that, I think, it makes a lot of sense. So, for example, the MRC is very strict about that. If you're going to do an intervention study, you need to have done the systematic review first. And obviously, if somebody else has done that systematic review, that's very easy. If nobody else has done that, then it's your responsibility really to take that on.
Dr. Lee Hooper, thank you for the interview. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Cheers.